We have a lot to cover in today's video. We have some offseason trade talk around the Montreal Canadiens and the Calgary Flames. Plus, is Sidney Crosby sour with the Penguins? Will it impact his future? We'll discuss the latest there. There are some rumblings about some of the members of the 2018 World Junior team that are awaiting trial, possibly heading to the KHL. So we're going to address that rumor. We also have some big updates on the NHL data when it comes to their revenue, salary cap, draft lottery, etc. We have some signings and injury updates, plus one of the members of the hockey online community and members of the media has gone on a massive rant about Zach Hyman, and it's really taken over social media tonight. We'll discuss what he said, how I greatly disagree with it, and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover in today's video. We have a bunch of NHL news, some trade talk, some offseason rumblings, some news around NHL salary cap and their revenue and all kinds of other data. But first, I want to start with a story that's dominating social media right now. If you're on X or Twitter, I'm sure you've seen this, but a member of the NHL online community, a member, I guess you could technically say they're a member of the media, Andrew Berkshire, who I believe at one point worked for Sportsnet. He most recently worked with SDPN. He was the head of their Game Over series, which had a series of online streams, which is basically post-game shows in various NHL Canadian markets. I know he started the Game Over Montreal because he's Montreal-based. I'm definitely a Habs fan. And like I said, I'm pretty sure he got to know Steve Dangle through Sportsnet. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure he worked at Sportsnet before that. I don't know what else he's done. I don't really know that much about him, but I know I've seen him and heard about him and familiar with him through the online social media world of hockey just over the last number of years. So he posted a video on his Twitter account just a few hours ago, and it's gotten a ton of traction for all the wrong reasons. It's really got everybody, I think, in the entire media world and more responding to this and kind of, going at him for what I'll refer to as what I think is a horrible, horrible take about Zach Hyman. Now, of course, we know Zach Hyman became I believe he was the second player to hit 50 goals in this season, because I know him and Reinhart did it on the same night, but if I'm not mistaken, I think he got his 50th first. I think Reinhardt's came a little later in the evening. Not that it really matters, but at the end of the day, right now, we got 3 NHL players with 50 goals. You got Matthews, Hyman, and Reinhart. And he decides to make I think it was about a 4-minute Twitter video kind of outlining the fact that Zach Hyman, that there's a lot more to this story, and that the media is not telling the truth and the whole truth around the Zach Hyman story. That ultimately a lot of people say that Zach Hyman is hardworking and that he's a prime example of hard work, perseverance, determination, whatever, that, if you really do work hard enough, that good things will happen and it'll all pay off. And he's basically calling that complete BS and saying that there's a lot more to the Hyman story that the media refuses to cover. And basically going on about how Zach Hyman came from a wealthy family and that his family were able to afford him a lot of opportunities, especially during his minor hockey days, that a lot of people wouldn't get access to. And essentially that they bought and paid for his success without, basically what he's saying here. That, there's so much more to the story, and that, he had access to training and all this other stuff that a lot of kids didn't get, and and how money played such a big role. I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, Zach Hyman was not a first-round pick. Zach Hyman was like a mid-round pick, had to play 3-4 years of college hockey. Didn't even have the greatest results in some of those seasons. Did his time in the minors. He does things that a lot of people will not do. He goes to the front of the net. It's a tough job. He'll battle in the corners. He's great at puck retrieval. Is he a great complimentary player to McDavid and when he was Matthews, when he was with the Leafs? Sure he is. And he also went on about not only all the things about coming from a wealthy family and how all those privileges is essentially what helped make him, but also how he's also been privileged in the fact that his entire NHL career, he's get to ride shotgun with the two best players in the NHL with Matthews and McDavid. I mean, has that helped? Maybe, but you know what? We've seen a lot of players play first line minutes with the best players in the NHL and not do what he did. So I don't think that that's really fair to say. But is he carved himself a skill set to be like the ultimate complementary player for those types of guys? Yeah, he has. How did he get there? A lot of hard work, a lot of practice, a lot of determination, and you can't take that away from him. I don't care how much money he came with. Really, if you take a look around the NHL and look at hockey in general, does money play a role in kids' developments nowadays? Unfortunately, the answer is yes, it does. Hockey's an expensive sport. It's almost become a sport for the higher income earners. You know, it's not a sport that everybody can afford to be a part of. And even if kids that are in it, a lot of those families are scraping to get them into that and can't afford the extra stuff that a lot of the higher earning parents do get for their kids. Is it unfair? Sure, but that's life. Not everything is fair. We're not all made equally. We all earn different amounts of income. That's just the way it goes, unfortunately. Look at a lot of NHL players nowadays. Is there a lot of second and third generational players? Like a lot of guys who had their dads and granddads playing in the NHL? Absolutely. Did they grow up wealthy? Yes, because their fathers made a really good living playing professional hockey. He's not talking about those guys. Being a Habs fan, I didn't see him complaining about Carey Price. Carey Price grew up in a situation where he was in a small community and it was a long way from getting access to, the quality hockey that he needed. So what did his dad do? He bought a plane. He bought a plane and was flying him to practices. Then they bought like a second home like they clearly had deep pockets. I don't see any complaints there. It just sounds like he's butthurt that maybe he wasn't. I don't know. Like, it's just completely absurd. Why you go on social media and just attack Zach Hyman like this? He is a hard-working guy. And I don't know how many people have said if their sons grow up to be nearly as good of a person as Zach Hyman is, that they will be thrilled with the people that they've raised. And like I said, I don't care about money. He works his ass off. He has done nothing but work to get what he's deserved and what he's accomplished. And, the fact that he was born into money, is that his fault? Was that his choice? Nope, it wasn't. In some ways, you could say it might not be any different than attacking people for other aspects of their life that they also cannot control. It just completely absurd. If you haven't seen this rant, I don't know if you really want to, but it's Andrew Berkshire on Twitter. He's being completely obliterated by the entire hockey media right now, and it's probably one of the biggest stories in the NHL today, even though it's really not about anything more than, in my opinion, a complete ass clown going off here on a well-accomplished hockey player because he grew up in a wealthy family. Like, come on, cry me a freaking river. Anyways, on to the actual news that means more to us here today. I don't want to shine any more of a light on Andrew Berkshire than I already have here by talking about his rant. Some news around the NHL. The NHL draft lottery is not confirmed and set in stone just yet, but right now it's slated to take place around May 6th or 7th. We also got word that the NHL's revenue right now is projected at $6.2 billion this year. And if so, that's going to be higher than expected, which would mean that NHL players would get around half, about 50% of their escrow that they've paid in this year would be returned to them. But it's capped at 6% this year, so about 3% of that money would be returned to the players. It also means that the pandemic losses and money that was owed from the players to the owners would be fully paid back. Of course, if the players are getting back money, that's paid. And on top of that, to be 50-50 split, they're getting money to boot as well. So that's a real good sign. That means they probably, to be honest, could have went with a higher salary cap this year. Of course, they didn't because the NHL in order to agree with the PA to raise it a little bit, wanted to also raise escrow, which they didn't want to do, and I understand as to why. So right now, the NHL is slated to move to a cap next year of 87.7, but given the fact that escrow is still set at 6% next year, all those losses are now paid off. I do wonder if they'll negotiate between the PA and the league a bit of a higher cap. If the NHL wants more escrow to be given up here to accomplish that, I can't see them agreeing to it, but they certainly have the capacity to do so, which would be great for a lot of these NHL teams trying to keep some of their players and just make the league a little bit better in that sense, because it's tough. You build yourself a good team, good players. As they need raises, you can't afford to keep everybody, and then they end up moving on. So we'll see what happens with the salary cap, but that's the latest business data on the NHL on that front. We got some other news around the NHL today. The Avalanche today announced that they've extended young goaltender Justus Annunen $835,000 on a two-year one-way contract. So obviously the young goaltender expected to stay in the Avs lineup and be at the NHL level. As I mentioned yesterday, it's expected that Pavel Francouz is not going to be coming back, that he's likely going to be heading towards retirement and isn't going to be making an NHL return. So clearly the Avs are ready to move forward with this young goaltender here. The Minnesota Wild today announced that they've signed Jack Pert. He gets a 3-year ELC. He was drafted 54th overall in 2021, where the defenseman's played the past 3 years at St. Cloud State. The Red Wings today announced as well they've signed centerman Emmett Finney. He gets his ELC on the books as well. A couple of pieces of news from the Anaheim Ducks organization. For one, they announced that Brock McGinn is out for the rest of the year. He's going to require about a 4-month recovery from back surgery. And Trevor Zegras expected to make his return tonight versus the Seattle Kraken. He's been out for an extended period of time, so that's good news there. New York Islanders defenseman Scott Mayfield, he's been out for a while, and he's being shut down. He required season-ending surgery due to a lower body injury as well. So right now, the Islanders are not currently in a playoff spot. Where they say season ending, I assume that definitely means regular season, but we don't know the nature exactly of what it was. So if they went on a deeper playoff run, could he come back? I'm not sure, because we don't know the extent of it. For right now, we'll assume that his season is over. Now, on to some other NHL rumors and news. There was some rumors that I seen online, which I believe came out of Russia and Russian TV outlet or news outlet, indicating that more specifically was talking about Flyers goaltender, or should I say former Flyers goaltender, Carter Hart, who's currently, along with some of his teammates, with the 5 of them from the 2018 World Junior Canadian team that are awaiting trial for sexual assault right now, of course, are not currently in the NHL. They're all on a leave of absence. Now, many of these players, including Hart, have a contract that expires at the end of this season. So technically, they'd be free agents. There was some speculation that Carter Hart and possibly some of his teammates could maybe head to play in the KHL. Carter Hart himself was apparently, through this rumor, linked to the AK Bars team, I believe it is. But that rumor, if you do come across that online, the reason I bring it up now is that it's actually been debunked. Elliot Friedman apparently has been able to gather information to suggest that's not true. I don't know that it would be completely impossible for these guys to go play in the KHL, although I do believe they would need, I'm not sure what the full conditions are on their release right now to be out awaiting trial. I'm not sure if there's any conditions preventing them from leaving the country. There could be. I'm not certain. I think, though, that they do have their passports to the best of my knowledge. I'm not sure. But I know it was mentioned that most of the European leagues wouldn't take these guys now, knowing that there is charges laid against them awaiting trial. But the KHL apparently doesn't care too much about that stuff. So I don't know. But it doesn't appear to be happening. Like I said, Elliot Friedman was able to gather information to debunk that. So if you see anything online about these players, including more specifically Hart going to the KHL, it doesn't appear to be true here for the time being, and I don't imagine it will. I think these guys are going to be not playing hockey anywhere until their trial takes place. Now, there's also a news article in the Hockey News talking about Sidney Crosby and how he's feeling right now after the year the Penguins have had. Now, it's not over by any means, but the Penguins are not in a good spot. They're not in a playoff spot right now, and they're not really in a great enough spot to pull off a miracle and get in. Now, crazier things have happened. They're not mathematically eliminated as I record this video, but the odds of them making the playoffs are extremely slim at this point, and it's likely not happening. The article suggests that Crosby might be sour at the Penguins. And this came, now the Hockey News article is based on comments from recent Darren Dreger comments made on a podcast. I believe it was a Barn Burner podcast. Now, Dreger also said that he still thinks the most likely outcome is that Crosby does sign an extension with the Penguins this year. He doesn't have enough intel or inside info to suggest that he doesn't want to be there anymore. But the fact that he's not happy right now, and really, if you think about it, it's no surprise. Crosby is one of the most ultra-competitive people you'll ever see in sports, and the fact that he's going to miss the playoffs for the second straight year after an incredible run since he went like how many years in a row. His first year they missed, then they made it every year since then except for last year, including winning three Stanley Cups. This is not something he's used to. He demands very high expectations of himself and his teammates, and for the large part of his career, he's gotten those results, but now they're not coming. So the fact that he's sour, yeah, I get it. But the fact that they traded Jake Gensel, and it seems like they're kind of shifting gears and going in a new direction, it sounds like Dreger's trying to suggest that he may not be completely happy. He did go on to say that he can't wait to see the end of season media availability, because obviously once teams are eliminated, they have their locker cleanout day, and there's usually a number of players that speak to the media. It'd be kind of curious to see what kind of comments he makes, because he's going to be asked about his future, where he's going to be going into the last year of his contract, and he's curious to see if Sid will just completely shut all that down and just be like, yes, I'm not happy with how this year went, but I fully intend to work out an extension. My intention is to sign and stay here for the rest of my career. Or, is he going to say something along the lines of, well, I'm going to need some time to think about it. I don't know the direction of the team. You hear a lot of it. They don't all leave, but you hear a lot of players make comments like that sometimes when they're really unsure of the team's direction and what they really want to do. Do they want to stay and be a part of this, or do they want to go in a different direction to try something else before their career is over? So it's curious to see. I know Dreger's kind of stirring the pot here a little bit when it comes to Sid. I really would, it'd be shocking if he did leave. I know I heard today I was listening to the Chris Johnson show, listening to CJ talk about the situation, and again he said, he as well would be surprised to see Crosby in a different uniform. But they talked about if it ever did happen, would he consider going to Colorado to play with his buddy Nate McKinnon? A lot of people have always been saying for years now, and I don't really know or think there's any truth to it, that he'd like to do a 1 year with Montreal to finish things off, because he grew up a Canadiens fan. Obviously, his dad has links to the organization from when he was drafted years and years ago. Just from a nostalgia, kid perspective, with having a connection to that franchise from his father. His father was drafted there, never made it pro, but would he want to do 1 year there just to kind of finish things off, to say he played for that franchise? Everything else he's always said indicates that he wants to be a Penguin for life, and his legacy in Pittsburgh is more important than anything else. So we'll be curious to see how things go. Considering his good friends that he lobbied hard for to stay in Malkin and Letang, signed extensions last offseason, and with a decent amount of term on each, for him to up and bail on them would be shocking. So I can't see it, but I guess we'll see here with Crosby. I don't think there's any chance he goes anywhere, but let me know what you think in the comments. Is it possible? Is he upset enough with the direction of this team that he would do it? I'm not there yet, but let me know what you think. Now, when it comes to the Habs and Flames, speaking of the Flames-based podcast, there's another one here, the Afterburner podcast, we're talking about Andrei Kuzmenko and whether or not he has a future with the Flames, or is he going to be a player that comes in, stays a short span, and goes out. Of course, he came to the Calgary Flames from the Vancouver Canucks in the Elias Lindholm trade. He had a great year with Vancouver last year. I think Calgary kind of wondered if they might be getting themselves a player that could be a real good piece for the future. He's still not, overly old. He's still on the younger side of things. And if he can be a 30 to 40 goal scorer like he showed last year, that might be a great pickup. If Lindholm wasn't going to stay anyways, and they can get him in that trade, why not take the chance? But based on how things have gone, we've seen him in and out of the lineup a couple of times, which was coach's choice. We haven't seen the results he put up the first year in Vancouver. So at this point, the Flames media that was running his podcast essentially saying that they believe there's a greater chance that they try to basically rehabilitate him to the point that they can get a better return and that they move on from him. And Andrei Kuzmenko, either not necessarily this offseason, I guess it would depend on how this year finishes for him. If he can finish on a hot streak and show good signs, and maybe otherwise be partway through next year, they can see the Flames trying to kind of do a pump and dump, if you will. Pump him up to the point that he can be more productive and then move on. So Andrei Kuzmenko very well might find himself on a move again already in a short span being in the NHL. I mean, that first year was excellent for him. And then ever since, and it's been trying to find it again. It's been tough. I do wonder how long his stay will last in the NHL. How long will it take him to find this game, or will he before it's too late? I don't know. And Montreal media is suggesting that, because we've talked a lot about the Habs lately and some of the young players that they might be targeting via trade, like Trevor Zegras. We talked about Alexander Holtz maybe being a possibility. We know the Habs are quite likely to want to go after another young player via trade around the time of the draft, like they've done with Kirby Dach and Alex Newhook. That's pretty clear based on comments from the Habs themselves. That's not a secret or an insider opinion. But other names out there that are the Montreal Canadiens are apparently going to be watching, because as much as they want to add young players, I think they'd like, if they can, to kind of make some movement this offseason with shifting out some of their veterans and maybe bringing in some other veterans. I think if they had an opportunity, which is going to prove difficult, but if they could move on from guys like Brendan Gallagher or Josh Anderson, I think they'd really like to do that. But this latest information suggests that they're going to be monitoring pending UFAs like Jake DeBrusk out of Boston, Daniel Sprong, Warren Foegele. These are like Foegele and Sprong are guys that can be pretty good middle six forwards. Sprong's got a good scoring touch. Fogel's got good speed. DeBrusk is an interesting case as well. I've seen a lot of them playing in Boston. I don't know what Jake DeBrusk's future holds, to be honest. I know he's an interesting guy with the Bruins. We don't know, from a Bruins perspective, there's been a lot of speculation about him in his future. A lot of it was around during the Bruce Cassidy era, but even since then, when Cassidy first left and Montgomery took over, it kind of died down. But now we're at a point through like this past year, a lot of the season, there's been a lot of speculation over his future, because he seems to be just a bit inconsistent with his results. And the Bruins are in flux right now. We don't know what they're going to do. Their playoff results will dictate, I think, a lot of how they proceed this offseason. And the future of Jake DeBrusk is questionable. There's no doubt. Could he be a fit in Montreal? He's still on the younger side of things. Might be a good target for them. I do think, though, he'd have a lot of options. He had been previously linked to some Western teams as well, including teams in his home province like the Flames and the Oilers. So we'll see. Warren Foegele and Daniel Sprong are certainly names out there that would not be overly expensive for a team like Montreal to get. I think they'll each get their fair share of interest in free agency. I'm not sure that either will be able to return, especially Foegele, to their existing NHL clubs. But, it'll be interesting to see how much money's thrown around. A lot of that's going to be dependent on the cap increase that we were talking about earlier. But are these names that you think make sense for Montreal to target? We know that they want to target a young top player via trade, which we've talked about in recent days. Would these be some good complementary players to try to round out that roster? I think Montreal wants to take a step forward next year and try to get into being more competitive and try to work their way out of being so low in the standings. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.